Everyone downsizes in the winter. That's exactly why I'm going to big baits. Hopefully with the worst of winter behind us, I can start looking forward to pre-spawn fishing. And a lot of you guys that are down south from me, you can start pre-spawn fishing, and this is a great time to break out all those big baits, even if your water is still cold. Especially with a lot of bass eating small meals and small bites throughout the whole winter while they're cold. Now they know the spawn is coming, so they got to start fattening up for that spawn. However, we need to make sure we can fish them slow enough and close enough to where they are so the bass will have to expend that much calories because the water isn't fully hot yet. So that means it's prime glide bait season. But especially with your glide baits, if your water's a little warmer, of course, you can use a normal glide bait. You want something that's suspending or floating. So something that you can work, get a nice glide in and just let it sit for a little bit. You want to be able to keep these baits sitting, especially with your glide baits. Think of it almost as jerkbait fishing. But especially in colder water, my preference is something with a lip. Not because I want to crank this thing down like a crankbait, but because you can do something called dead walking, where we're going to get this bait to just do this. It's going to swing its head left, swing its head right, and it's not going to move forward much. So I can pitch this to close cover or pitch this to shallows where that may be starting to warm up in, and just have this glide bait hang out in that area and just go back and forth. And you can do the same thing with a wake bait that has a lip on it. You just have to put a little bit of weight here to get this bait to kind of suspend a little bit lower. Of course, we can't not talk about a wake bait. Even here in New England, you hear stories online about guys that are catching large bass in the dead of winter on large wake baits in the night. And just like with the glide baits, we want to work in a lot of pauses, right? We don't want to just slowly retrieve this. While the really slow retrieve can work, and we can just get this wake bait to wake on the top like we do rest of the year, we do want to work in some pauses. That's either just stop reeling and just let that thing sit there for a good amount of time and let the bass see it just floating there, or you can kind of slowly wake this bait and then give it a sharp hit with your rod so that it cuts to one side and then just sits there. And of course, a great option always is going to be some kind of soft body swim bait. So something like the Huddlestons that you can cast out and you can fish it on the bottom. So if your bass aren't really rising up as much, but they're still active and still trying to eat big meals, these Huddlestons that have a top hook are great because you can let these sit on the bottom. You don't even want to move it that much, right? Either a super slow retrieve or just kind of let it sit there. Some people do something called moonwalking, where you raise your rod and slowly drag it to the side. So this bait does a slow up and then a slow down, and then it will just kind of sit there on the bottom, and then the bass will come. So right now in colder water, yes, sizing down, going to your smaller baits will catch you bass, but when everyone else is throwing that right now, sometimes throwing them the big meal, something completely different, is a great way to catch bass. So what are you waiting for? Get out there.